What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Cliffy's hand. No, welcome back. He's trying to get his, in focus here. We have the NHL Strategy Show, sponsored by BetMGM. I'm your host, Josh Harris. We have a 9-game main slate today. We have a 4-game early slate, which we will touch on. Joining me, as always, Slim Cliffy. How we doing today?
Not too bad. Real nice day outside, so can't really complain about that. I can complain about how bad I did last night. Just went single entry on that 3-gamer, game stacked Colorado and Seattle. Didn't really work out, and it feels bad, man, because I actually played Jack Johnson last night from Chicago.
Jack Johnson?
Yeah, and he had an assist with the combo meal over on DraftKings. He racked up both bonuses. I was thinking we got to come up with a new name for the combo meal. It just kind of feels, a little too mundane. I was thinking, do you remember the wrestling tag team Demolition from like the late 80s, early 90s?
Yes.
There's two guys.
He does too, because he's 83 years old. So
there's two guys named Axe and Smash. So axe being your shots, like you chop at the puck, and smash like the puck smashing into your shin pads. I was thinking we could call it a demolition, but I didn't cash. But I'm just spitting out loud here. How'd you do last night?
I also game stacked the late game. So, I mean, it's weird because you have these high-powered offenses on short slates. You're hoping that there's multiple paths to victory. But if you didn't have any Tampa, you weren't going to cash. The Avs lost. It looked awful. That Wings-Hawks game, setback hockey, 200 years. That was one of the worst games I've ever seen. But can't really take away anything from a 3-game slate if you got crushed. You know what I mean? It's not like – I hate the phrase process over results, but there's almost no process for a 3-game slate. So if you got crushed, no worries. We have another big slate to get through today. And give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when shows go live. Most of you guys here already do that. We appreciate it a lot. Helps us a lot. Helps you guys get more free shows, which is something we like to do. Before we get into the main slate, we have a 4-game early slate. Now we have to be out at exactly 12:55 Eastern, so we're not going to spend too much time on this 4-gamer, but let me just go through the games real quick, and I'll give you a couple of my thoughts, and we'll get Cliffy's thoughts as well. We have Minnesota in Boston. We have the Sharks at New Jersey. We have the Coyotes at Ottawa and the Blues at the Oilers. Now, the Minnesota-Boston game is in Boston, so I'd imagine, Bergeron gets a lot of that Hartman, Zuccarello, Kaprizov matchup. So not big on Minnesota 1 here. I think they can be in your portfolio. If you're MMEing, not sure. I'm getting to them in my one lineup that I'm doing for this early slate. Boston, I think, if you're going to do anything power play stack, Minnesota has goaltending and penalty kill issues. So I don't mind that there. Sharks, Devils, I like the Devils top 6 here. You don't have to power play stack. As you saw with the Sharks-Rangers game, the Sharks penalty kill is elite, which is so weird because they're such a bad team, but they are very good on the penalty kill. Don't mind, either of the top 2 lines for the Devils. On the Sharks side, Hurdle Meyer for me, the Devils are a good team. They just had pretty bad goaltending. I don't mind picking on the Devils here. Coyotes Senators is an absolute festival. I think, power play stack the either side really. I obviously prefer the Senators side here. They have a massive total, 3.9. I think you can power play stack the Sens. I also think you can use that second line comfortably, even though they don't have great power play correlation. That line has been very, very good together. Alex DeBrincat, coming over is a huge thing for the Senators' depth, and he's looked so good so far this season. So any of the top 2 Senators lines, power play stack. On the Coyote side, I don't mind going Keller, Boyd, Ritchie, Ghost. We're finding usable Coyote slates. That's not going to be the case very often, but I think this is one where you can use them. And in the late game, I don't think Buchnevich is in. I haven't seen a definitive update. So for me, it's probably going to be Shen, Thomas, Tarasenko. And then with the Oilers, broken record, power play stack, or, work around McDavid, Draisaitl, and power play stack, which is exactly what I just said. So what are you thinking for the early?
Yeah, I'm just going to give a few lines. You talked about the New Jersey top six. I think it's the Hughes Mercer line that really kind of stands out for me in that game. Assuming Hischier goes up against that Hurdle Meyer top line, we talk about it often. The San Jose depth for a couple of years now has been pretty bad outside the top line. It might be a little bit better with Nick Bonino there. He's actually been fine alongside Logan Couture, but Hughes and Mercer, 4.8 expected goals generated in their minutes together since Mercer got to the NHL. They're both on the top power play. Like you said, San Jose is a good penalty kill, but Reimer's not going to keep saving 1,000% or 100% of the shots that he faces. So I like Hughes Mercer. I don't mind the San Jose top line. On the flip side, they're relatively cheap. Like Hurdle's down under 5K. On DraftKings, Meyer, he's still somewhat expensive, but 6,200 is definitely more than palatable. I think that's even a spot where you can game stack if you really want to get different on the early slate. So I like the San Jose top line, and I like that Hughes Mercer duo. Going to the Blues Oilers, Buchnevich, he's not confirmed to be in, but he did skate with them yesterday on that Thomas and Tarasenko line. So I'm operating as if he is in the lineup. 3.2 expected goals generated in 380 minutes together as a trio, 5.6 actual goals. They'll probably see a fair bit of the Leon Draisaitl line, and Draisaitl with Nugent Hopkins, their defense hasn't been very good over the last couple of years. So I like that St. Louis second line, or the Tarasenko Thomas line, provided that Buchnevich is in. In goal, it's probably Linus Ullmark, the goalie that I like the most, provided that he does get the start. He is confirmed. Obviously, you just always have to check out warmups. And it may be a long shot on James Reimer. The Devils are generating a ton of offense so far this year, but have had a little bit of trouble finishing. Reimer's probably not going to carry much ownership on this early slate. He's relatively cheap. Now I see Kaapo Kähkönen is confirmed, so never mind. I'll definitely not play Kähkönen on that early slate. If you're looking for a lower price goalie, I think you want to go with whoever starts for Minnesota. But honestly, I think Ullmark's just my favorite goalie on the early slate.
Yeah, agreed. Ullmark is fine. Anton Forsberg, fine. There's not a goalie I don't want to play besides maybe Kaapo Kähkönen. I guess you can take a stab there, but I think on most short slates, most goalies are on play. So, but yeah, I agree with you that Linus Ullmark is my favorite. So, yeah, I mean, if you have questions about the early slate, we'll try to get to it before the end of the show if we have time. I know it locks right at the end of the show, but we'll try to get to there. But we also have a 9-game main slate to get through, so let's hit that up. First game of the night, we have the Dallas Stars with a 3.3 total. Heading into Montreal, the Canadiens have a 2.6 total. I haven't seen goalie news, but I don't know if Ottinger is banged up.
He was the first goalie off at morning skate today, so it should be Ottinger starting.
Good. That makes this a little bit easier. Jake Allen probably in net for the Canadiens. Don't see any changes to the lines here. We don't have, in the lineup builder anyway, we don't have an ownership run. I am a little blind on that. I will defer to you if you have it, but I don't mind Dallas one here tonight. They do have a fairly big road, like a very high road total, 3.3. Canadiens have issues defensively. Jake Allen has looked good this season. Depending on ownership, I don't mind getting to some Dallas one tonight. On the Canadian side, I don't know. I like them. I just don't know if I'm going to get there in 1 to 3. Going into Ottinger, he's really coming to his own the past few years. Don't mind a little bit of that Dvorak Gallagher 2-man. If you're working in some power play stacks, you can get those cheap 2 guys in there. Kirby Dach, Johnny Drouin for 5,300. Don't mind that as well. Like Montreal 1 is fine. Just don't know if I'm going to get to them in 1 to 3.
Yeah. Just one note on the morning skate came out, about 10 minutes before we came on air. Denis Gurianov is being moved up to the second line with Tyler Seguin and Mason Marchment. I see you nodding your head because this is something we've been waiting for a while. We've been waiting to buy into the Denis system for Dallas. You're right about Dallas won here tonight. They're not going to carry very much ownership. I'll bring up our top stacks real quick. You can see Colorado won the best leverage. Old Pittsburgh won. We'll get to that game, but Jake Gensel isn't playing, so that might change things a little bit. But Dallas, the top line, number 3 with nearly 9% leverage. That's top 2 stack percentage over ownership. The problem with Dallas is kind of twofold. Like, one, they're not playing anybody very heavily. Like, I'm pretty sure everybody on the top line so far this year is at 16 minutes or less per game. Like, that's just a mass. Like, that's like 3 minutes off where Jason Robertson was playing last year. That is a huge decline in ice time. Like, they're really spreading it around amongst their forwards. And what ties into that is the power play. They're spreading out the ice time pretty much evenly between the 2 power play units. So even though Montreal does have a very bad penalty kill, and Dallas's top line could take advantage of that, they're just not getting a lot of ice time. So, on DraftKings, are you going to spend, nearly $20K for a line that might play 16 minutes here tonight? On FanDuel, $21K for a line that might play, 16 minutes here tonight. It's a pretty good matchup, especially on the power play. I just worry about ice time. So it's making me want to dip down to Dallas 2 here. I wrote them up in the Power Plays article. It should be up soon over on Stokastic.com, free for everyone to read. Now, obviously, we don't have a line sample now that Denis Gurianov has moved up, but the old line with Ty Dellandrea there, 2.7 expected goals generated per 60 minutes, and Tyler Seguin seemingly healthy now, generating a 3-year high in shot attempts per 60 minutes. So where they're coming in at a pretty reasonable price, that Dallas second line, you're going to get into the second and third lines of Montreal, which aren't really that great defensively. I think Monahan jumping up to the top line might actually help that out defensively a little bit, but they're not coming in with much ownership, about 3 to 4% over on DK. Very reasonable price. They're going to play just as many power play minutes as the top line. So if you're going to play roughly the same minutes, and no, they're not as good offensively, but they're also $6,000 less over on DK. I like that Dallas second line here tonight. You don't have to 3-man stack them. If you want to leave Gurianov off, I think that's fine, but he is kind of a shooter. Like, he's a guy that can, definitely snipe a couple goals in a game. We have seen it from him in the past. So, I think 3-man stacking, especially at the price, is just fine. But I think Gurianov would be the guy to leave off if I was going to go 2-man. But I do like that Dallas second line. On the Montreal side, I'm probably going to avoid the top line here in this game. Been liking them in a lot of matchups, but going into that Dallas top line is a pretty tough matchup. So far this year, Dallas won, only allowing 1.6 expected goals against per 60 minutes, which is really good. Jake Ottinger in net is not Scott Wedgwood. Ottinger, he's been really, really good early in his career, had a great playoffs last year, despite the loss in the first round, looked good early this season. So probably not stacking anything from Montreal, but if I were to do anything, it would be like a one-off Josh Anderson, a one-off Brendan Gallagher, something along those lines. Not stacking anything. So that's kind of where I am. Don't mind Dallas 1 because of the leverage. I just worry about low minutes. Like Dallas 2 better, maybe some one-off depth wingers from the Habs.
Yeah, the minutes is a concern. On the flip side, if Montreal gives them 4 or 5 power plays, they can certainly hit value if they score a couple power play goals. So that is a question that you want to answer for yourself for GPP lineups. On the blue lines, not too much on either side that I really like. Like Miro, I guess, is fine, but he's too expensive for me. Jordan Harris would probably be the punt for me, or Jonathan Kovacevic. That's really about it. I guess Ryan Suter at 3,400, if you're using Dallas 2, also makes some sense.
Yeah, this is probably site dependent. I think Jordan Harris is getting a bit too expensive on FanDuel, but Harris has 16 shots and 13 blocks in the early parts of the season for Montreal on the blue line. Don't mind him as a cheap type. I think Miro. I was expecting a lot more ownership on Heiskanen because of the matchup, but our early ownership run has him at 1%. He needs to score. He needs to produce points for fantasy value because he's not great peripherally. And I don't think this is a good matchup for peripherals anyway, unless he can somehow manage a ton of shots. But Miro getting involved in goals in a good power play matchup, I can, at 1% ownership, I think he should be considered here amongst the expensive defensemen tonight. If you're higher owned, I would say just leave him alone. But at 1%, I think, he definitely has to at least be considered.
For sure. Let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the New York Islanders, 2.9 total. Heading into Tampa, the Tampa Bay Lightning have a 3.2 total. Tampa Bay played last night, so it's probably not going to be Vasilevsky. It'll probably be Moose, Brian Elliott, which is a big step down. Ilya Sorokin, who is cheap on DraftKings tonight, probable for the Islanders. I want to like the Islanders tonight. It's just so hard to get behind them for DFS. I don't know if I'm going to full stack anything. I'll probably take bits and pieces of some lines here. Back-to-back for the Lightning against a team that doesn't take too many penalties. I don't know if I'll get there in 1-3, but that Hagel Point Kucherov line looked pretty good last night. The power play looked pretty good. I think an MME makes some more sense for both sides of this game.
Yeah, it's the Kucherov Point Hagel line that's kind of interesting to me here for this reason. I was looking at how different wingers have fared on the top line with Point and Kucherov. Without Stamkos there over the last few years, Point Kucherov, their goals per 60 minutes, 5-on-5 is 2.9, which is good, but it's certainly not, amongst the elite lines. Like, if you get into your Toronto ones and your Pittsburgh ones and all that, you're looking, well north of 3 goals per 60 minutes, Dallas 1, Minnesota 1, all those lines. So not really scoring a ton without Stamkos there. And Stamkos is, he's shooting a lot to start this season. We saw that last night against Florida. Problem is Ilya Sorokin, right? That's always the issue with playing the Islanders. But the Islanders have been pretty bad defensively this year. It's been kind of a continuation from last year. In fact, the only team allowing more expected goals against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 this year is Anaheim. That's how bad the Islanders have been. But, Ilya Sorokin has certainly bailed them out on a number of occasions. Now, the way the matchup is probably going to work, thanks to our good buddy at Line Matching on Twitter, is that the Tampa Bay top line is probably going to see a fair amount of that Brock Nelson line from the Islanders. Now, they did change up their lines. I think it was in practice yesterday. They moved Josh Bailey alongside Anders Lee and Brock Nelson. And Josh Bailey's cooked. I went and looked at some of his micro stats last year, almost everything: shots, scoring chances, passes to teammates for shots, zone entries, zone entries, all his playmaking stats, all his shot stats, all at least one standard deviation below the league average. This guy looks absolutely cooked, and I can't imagine he's going to help that line defensively.
That Quick Party says he's out tonight.
Who is?
Bailey.
Oh, Bailey's out. Stayed after late optional. Well, okay, so we don't know what that line combination is going to look like then. Either way, even if they move Oliver Wahlstrom up there, Wahlstrom's not good defensively. He'd be a better offensive option for them, but he wouldn't help them defensively. So it's a matter of that line, I just think won't be as good defensively as they will be, had they left Beauvillier there or had they moved Kyle Palmieri down or something like that. So I don't mind Tampa 1 here tonight, especially where they're coming in with a reasonable price, good leverage. It is back-to-back, but they are at home at least, thankfully. So I don't mind Tampa 1, but they're certainly not at the top of my top lines, let's say. There wouldn't be in my top 3 for first lines that I'd want to play here tonight. Tampa 2 is kind of interesting. Alex Killorn has had a tough start to the season, but Steven Stamkos has looked really, really good. Whether it's Nemestikov, whether it's Killorn, one of them is going to be on the top power play unit with Stamkos. They're going to see a fair bit of that Barzal line. And, Barzal, we talk about how good he is offensively, and he is, but, defensively, that line still probably won't be very strong. 85-minute sample of Barzal and Palmieri playing with Anthony Beauvillier, 3.7 expected goals against per 60 minutes. That's a lot of expected goals to give up. So I think both Tampa top lines are fine here tonight. It's just kind of a matter of how much you want to pay, who you want to use. On the Islanders side, it would be the top line that I would go to. It would be that Barzal line. With Beauvillier there, it really kind of changes that dynamic offensively. The second line for Tampa doesn't control nearly as many as the expected goals when they're on the ice. So if I'm playing anyone from the Islanders, it is that Barzal line. Not coming in with any ownership. Brian Elliott in net. I think it's perfectly fine to use them as kind of a filler here tonight, like two-man Barzal and Beauvillier or Barzal and Palmieri or something like that. So it's kind of where I am. Islanders 1, Tampa 2, but I hate going up against Sorokin. It just feels bad, man. So I don't know if I'm going to get there in single entry or 3 max, but Tampa definitely needs consideration, especially with, both lines coming in at under 5% on a 9-game slate.
For sure. Moving to the blue line, now that I see the name Nicholas Perbix, that reminds me that I wanted to give a shout out to our homie Big Turk in Discord for hitting a 10-leg shot on goal parlay. He's our new no teeth, except he has teeth, so we're going to call him veneers. You can use Nicholas Perbix over 39 fantasy points for your 11th leg tonight. No, but congrats to you. That was an insane hit. I stayed up way too late with that, and I'm still paying the price. But moving to the blue lines, Noah Dobson, a little pricey on DK, but I think this is a okay spot for him. Adam Pelech is probably the guy I'd punt with at 3,100. Ryan Pulock is okay. He's kind of priced in no man's land. On the Tampa side, like Hedman's so expensive. Chernak is a decent punt. He just hasn't been doing too much with his minutes. Mikhail Sergachev would probably be the guy for me.
Yeah, don't mind Sergachev. I think Dobson's kind of the defenseman I like most in this game. He's shooting a ton to start this year. He's third among all defensemen in shot volume per 60 minutes. I think it's only Makar and Yossi ahead of him. He's a guy that can definitely rack up the peripherals, at least over on DK. So I actually don't mind Dobson here tonight. I don't think I would get to him on FanDuel where the peripherals aren't as important. But I think he's perfectly fine on DraftKings tonight. But this probably isn't a game where I'm going for my defenseman.
Yep. And I see a $10 super chat from Big Turk, who's taking $10 and giving it to us instead of using it for virtual reality porn, which is nice of him. He says, "Thanks for all your insight, fellas. Thank you for hanging out in our Discord. It's a lot of fun, especially when you're tilting your face off."
Yeah, it is. And hopefully not too much tilting tonight. Hopefully some winning tonight. I saw some people had, good 3X, 4X last night. Let's hope we can build on that here tonight.
Speaking of $10, bet $10 and win $200 if any team scores a goal tonight. We have 24 teams. Someone's going to score a goal. It's free money from sportsbooks. Take it while you can because it doesn't happen often, except for the past week that they've been giving out this promo. It is very nice. Has to be first-time bet MGM users only. Has to be a money line bet. So if you haven't at this point, I don't know what you're doing. Just sign up and get that free $200. So let's move on to the next game. We have the Los Angeles Kings with a 3.1 total heading into Washington. The Capitals have a 3.3. Evgeny Kuznetsov is suspended tonight.
No, he's back.
Oh, he's back tonight.
Yeah, he's back tonight on the top line with Ovechkin and Sheary.
I forgot what day it is. That is fine. It doesn't really change much for me, to be honest. On the King side, top 6 remains the same. Kaliev, Byfield, Velarde on the third line. I never know what to do with the Capitals. The Kings have looked awful in net. Well, at least Peterson. Quick has looked okay, but he still hasn't looked great. Big totals on both sides here. Like, I just never know what to do with the Caps. I kind of like some stuff on the Kings side, but the Caps have been pretty good defensively this year.
Yeah, the thing with Washington that's kind of bugging me is they ran some power play units this morning, and though Kuznetsov is back and they're playing with Connor Sheary, both Kuznetsov and Sheary are on the second power play unit. So the top unit is Ovechkin plus everybody on the second line, which is real annoying for DFS and stacking purposes. Because I was actually looking through the numbers with Kuznetsov and Sheary. There's a decent sample of that trio, Washington's new top trio, playing pretty well together. Over 200 minutes, 3.0 expected goals generated per 60 minutes, 3.1 actual goals. Like, that's pretty good. And, especially the expected goals numbers for a line with Ovechkin. Not great defensively, but we certainly wouldn't expect that from him. And more than anything, they're going to go into that Los Angeles second line a fair bit here tonight. Los Angeles too was one of our favorite lines a year ago. This year, they look like an absolute mess. In about 50 minutes played, 2.5 expected goals for per 60, 3.5 against, allowing 3.5 goals against. Now, I haven't seen a morning skate from them yet. Last game, Arthur Kaliev moved up in place of Trevor Moore, which is pretty interesting to me because Kaliev and Arvidsson are both really I hope high-end shooters, even though Arvidsson really hasn't been shooting a lot yet this year. And Phil Deneau seems like he could complement that well, but I don't know if Kaliev would necessarily make them better defensively instead of Trevor Moore. So I think regardless, I think this is a pretty good matchup for the Washington top line. It just bothers me that the power play units are split up between Ovechkin and his two line mates. And they're coming in with a fair bit of ownership because of how cheap Kuznetsov and Sheary are. Coming in, 10.5% over on DraftKings, which is, doubled their top 2 percentage. Much better on FanDuel, but they are much more expensive on FanDuel. That's kind of the trade-off. So I think on FanDuel, they're definitely in play. On DraftKings, I don't know, one-offing Ovechkin is certainly acceptable. I wrote about him in the Power Plays article over on Stokastic.com. I wonder if you can't pair him with a Dylan Strome or, TJ Oshie or something like that, even though they play different even strength lines, because, this Kings penalty kill has been pretty bad this year. And it's not just their goaltending either. The goaltending itself hasn't been very good, but the PKs, around just outside the top 10, I guess it's not that bad, but it certainly hasn't been great. Goaltending's just really let them down. I do like Washington 1. I do like Washington 2 as well. But I think it's a case where I'm not stacking anything from Washington without Ovechkin. That's just the way it goes. So even if I like Washington 2, leave off Johansson and add Ovechkin, or, leave off Oshie and add Ovechkin, even though I'd probably want Oshie there. Oshie's generating a lot of expected goals so far this season. So I do like Washington 1/Washington power play, however you want to do that. On the Kings side, it's about how they line up, because last game they moved Velarde to the top line and Fiala down to the third line. Velarde has been playing pretty well so far this year. He could make that top line better defensively and be a tougher matchup for Washington too, but I don't think he makes them any better offensively. But Washington hasn't looked great so far this year themselves. It's just there's a fair bit of ownership coming in on the LA top 2 lines. So if anything, I'm playing Kings 1 here tonight. Kopitar, Kempe, hopefully Fiala's back. We'll see when warmups hit. Maybe we'll get some news throughout the day. But for me, I think this is a game more about Washington than anything else. The Kings top line, only 2.7 expected goals generated so far this year, 3.6 against. They're really struggling defensively. So, we talked earlier about how much the second line struggling defensively as well. I think it's just a really good matchup for that Washington top 6.
Yeah, Kings are searching right now. Maybe they'll find it and they'll be more usable soon. Moving to the blue lines, Doughty and Dursey, very cheap. Fine for me on the Kings. On the Capital side, Carlson, really expensive, 7,100 on DraftKings. I guess if you want to add him in on power play stacks, that is fine. Dmitry Orlov, 4K, decent price there, but that's really about it.
Yeah, the Washington penalty kill, if there's one way Los Angeles could really get there tonight, the Washington penalty kill has been awful to start this year, bottom 5 by expected goals against, bottom 5 by actual goals against. So where Drew Doughty's price has, it's sunk like a stone over on DraftKings. I do like him here tonight. A little bit more expensive on FanDuel, but he's still keeping up the peripherals, playing a ton of minutes. If the Kings don't hammer him, he could easily get in on like 2 or 3 goals of the 3 goals or something like that here tonight because he plays so many minutes for him. I do like him on DK because of his price and because it's a good power play matchup for Los Angeles.
Yep. So let's move on to the next game of the night. The Pittsburgh Penguins have a 3.7 total heading into Columbus. The Blue Jackets have a 2.9. Jake Gensel out tonight. I didn't see who was taking his place. Do you know, did they skate?
No, it was an optional this morning.
Yeah, so we won't know until warm-ups. I wonder if that total, I put in the totals before we got definitive Gensel news, that might come down a little bit during the day. On the Blue Jackets side, same lines here. I guess we're kind of in a wait and see here who replaces Gensel because it could be, any one of a few guys. It could be Zucker, it could be Rust, could be Heinen, could be Kapanen. You know what I mean? If it's Rust, I'll have some interest in that top line. If it's anything else, I'll probably just power play stack. On the Columbus side, I do like that top line. I don't know if this is a Columbus slate.
Yeah, I think when Gensel got hurt in their last game, it was Danton Heinen that jumped to the top line. I can't imagine I'm going to be stacking lines with Danton Heinen on them here tonight, even though it is a pretty good matchup going into Columbus. The thing is like Crosby's probably going to see quite a bit of the Columbus top line with Boone Jenner, Johnny Gaudreau, and Gustav Nyquist. And Gustav Nyquist being there is kind of settles them a little bit defensively, and they have a pretty good sample going back, a couple years, on that top line without Line, like 2.5 expected goals against, 2.6 actual goals against. So far this year, only 1.7 goals against as a trio in over 40 minutes together. Like they've been pretty good, and without Gensel next to him, Crosby's numbers, at least the on ice numbers, are not very good. 2.5 expected goals for, 2.8 against, only 47% of the expected goal share, only 2.6 goals generated per 60 minutes. Like, I don't know, like without Gensel on that top line, like he is a big difference maker on the wing for them. I'm probably out on Pittsburgh 1. With Pittsburgh 2 staying together, I think that's definitely the line I would go to for a couple reasons. One is Columbus did minutely switch up their lines. Yegor Chinnikov now with Cole Sillinger. I think they moved Kent Johnson up to the top or the second line with Voracek. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Like Chinnikov and Johnson are pretty much interchangeable for me, regardless of what they go with. Columbus too. So Sillinger or Brozovic and Voracek, just not very good together. 2.3 expected goals for, 3.5 against per 60 minutes. That's the matchup that Evgeny Malkin and that second line are probably going into. And they're not playing a ton, 16, 17 minutes, but I don't wonder if they play more here tonight with Gensel out. Like they might lean more heavily on that second line. So where Pittsburgh's 2 not coming in with much ownership, 5 to 6%. Been playing really, really well together so far this year, shooting a ton, generating a ton, really good 5-on-5 matchup against the Columbus second and third lines. I do like Pittsburgh 2 here tonight. I mean, I also like Columbus 1. Like, I hate to say it because they're coming in with, reasonable ownership. We're looking at about 10% over on FanDuel, much, much higher, or on DraftKings, much, much higher over on FanDuel. So, it is kind of worrisome that people are going to be using them so much. I think on DK, they're perfectly acceptable. But perfectly correlated on the power play unit. They're, like I said, Crosby's numbers without Gensel on the top line with them have not been good, has been good. They're a reasonable price. So, you're not priced out of some of the more expensive stacks that might be elsewhere on this slate. I do like that Columbus top line. So it's Columbus top line, Pittsburgh 2 for me out of this one. And I think the Columbus top line might be my favorite line in this game. It feels weird to say, but that's kind of where I am.
Johnny Gaudreau has looked very, very good on the Blue Jackets so far this season. On the blue lines, if you're doing anything with the Pittsburgh power play, Letang makes some sense. Jeff Petrie has been putting up some peripherals. I think at 4,800 he is fine. On the Blue Jacket side, Werenski always in play. DFS darling Nick Blankenberg still putting up big numbers. Now paired with Werenski, he's going to see big minutes. So I am perfectly okay with some Blankenberg tonight. Whiskers.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going to double dip on the Blankenberg. Peak might be a decent spot for some block shots. I think Jeff Petrie's kind of an interesting guy here. I wrote up in the Power Plays article that's good. Should be up on Stokastic.com right now. He's because he was in Montreal last year and they hired a coach on February 9th. Since February 9th, Petrie's second among all NHL defensemen in points per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. This is a good 5-on-5 matchup for Pittsburgh. Gensel being out really does hurt. I think Petrie's kind of a good pivot away from Chris Letang here tonight against what has been a good Columbus PK so far to start the year. So I think Petrie's my favorite defenseman in this game.
Yeah, don't mind it at all. Does your game have performance issues? Insert some hardwood. What does promo code hardwood get you? $10 for 10 days of Stokastic Platinum. NBA is back, and that means it's time for our best promo of the year. Get full access to all of our data, tools, that's promo code hardwood, for every sport: NBA, NHL, NFL, PGA, soccer, esports, everything. As well as the all-new lineup generator, which allows you to build and export up to 20 lineups using our data. That's 80% off our normal platinum pricing, and you get access to the lineup generator. Use promo code hardwood or click the link in the description to sign up. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Toronto Maple Leafs with a 3.8 fraudulent total going into Winnipeg. The Jets have a 3.1 total. Nicholas Robertson, the savior of the Leafs so far this season, is on the second line. Again, he's only 2,700. On the Jet side, it looks like Mason Appleton still going to be on that top line, with Ehlers going on the IR, which is a big bummer, which means Blake Wheeler moving back up to the top power play unit, which really brings the Winnipeg flow chart back into play here. I do like the Leafs tonight. Matthews, for some reason, hasn't been shooting much the past two games. Maybe he's trying to take someone's head. I don't know what he's doing, but I don't mind going back there tonight. That second line is one of our biggest negative leverage lines on the night. I do really like them, though. The Winnipeg flow chart says bad matchup, you play them. This is a bad matchup. Don't mind power play stacking here. The Leafs have some issues in net and on the blue line.
Yeah, Austin Matthews said he wanted to get more involved physically this season. So we've seen that early in the season. He had 16 hits in 5 games, which is as many as he had in 62 games back in 2017, 2018. Like, he's hitting a lot more. The problem is that it might be causing some goal scoring issues. His individual expected goals per 60 minutes so far this year is down about 20% from where it was last year. He's still shooting a lot, but he's not getting the same quality looks. I just wish he would focus on scoring goals and not hitting people as somebody that plays DFS. But if he's going to keep this up and not score anything as somebody that doesn't like the Toronto Maple Leafs, keep it up, bud. This is a pretty good matchup for the Toronto top line going into Winnipeg, though. Whether you're going up against the first line or the second line from the Jets, neither of them are going to be very strong defensively. Even the top line with Mason Appleton there, probably going to struggle defensively. So it's a great 5-on-5 matchup for Toronto. It's also a good power play matchup for them. The Jets have the worst penalty kill in the league by expected goals against so far this year. The actual goals against, not killing them just yet, but they are 22nd in goals against while down a man on the season. So you get Matthews and Marner on the top power play. I do like them here tonight, but they are coming in with a fair bit of ownership. We have them as the highest owned line on the night. I'll just bring that up here real quick. You see Toronto 1, right at the top at 24%, and then Nashville 1, we'll get to them later, and then Toronto 2, you talked about the negative leverage. There they are right there on DK. Over on FanDuel, it's a little bit different where they're more expensive. I think FanDuel, they're a much higher consideration because of the price. So, especially over on FanDuel, I like Toronto 1 here tonight, but it is just a good matchup at all strengths for them. They have to break out eventually, right? Like, even though they are kind of struggling, the Toronto top line still generating 3.8 expected goals per 60 minutes so far this year, which is a huge, huge number. I just think, Connor Hellebuck is a concern, but it's a good 5-on-5 matchup. It's a good power play matchup. Eventually, you got to score and beat somebody. So I do like Toronto 1. I like Toronto 2. If you want to, not worry yourself about ownership so much, do a power play stack. Go, Matthews, Marner, and Tavares. Or, if you want to not pay up for Matthews, go Marner, Tavares, and Nylander or something like that. I think that's kind of where I'm going here tonight. On the Winnipeg side, just nothing of interest. That second line just has not been good for them. The top line, with Scheifele and Connor there, typically very good, but I was looking at their numbers over the last few years without a good third wheel, and I even include Blake Wheeler in that conversation. Like, without Wheeler, without Pierre-Luc Dubois, without Nikolai Ehlers, like when they're just throwing some guy on that top line, 2.3 expected goals for, 2.7 against. They're underwater. Virtually identical goals for numbers at 2.4 per 60 minutes. I think I'm just out on Winnipeg entirely here tonight, in on definitely the Toronto top 6, maybe some sort of power play stack.
Inhale that copium, Leafs fans. They have to break out eventually. Moving to the blue line, I don't know. Like, Morgan Riley, 5,800's okay. Like, if they are going to break out, it probably is going to be on the power play. He'll get involved there, possibly. Rasmus Sandin, min price is fine. Hull, 3,100 is fine. Like, I just don't like punting Leafs defensemen in general. On the Winnipeg side, I guess Morrissey, like, there just is, like, probably Brendan Dillon for shot blocks would be the guy on Winnipeg.
Yeah, Brendan Dillon was the guy that I had circled as well. I'm probably not going to get to the expensive defenseman. Might not be a bad spot to throw in Morgan Riley, just because it is such a good power play matchup. If the power play does break out, he's probably going to be a big part of it. Not super expensive, so I don't mind Riley in some Toronto stacks, but I think Brendan Dillon on a per dollar value is probably my favorite defenseman in this game.
Agreed. So let's move on to the next game of the night. We have the Philadelphia Flyers with a 2.5 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 3.6. Man, like, there's two things here that I really like. Nashville 1, but I don't like their ownership. And Carter Hart has been lights out to start this season. What are you doing with Nashville 1 tonight?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I think this is a spot where you can get away from that Nashville top line. And the reason I say that is because they've just been flat out bad to start this season. 60 minutes together, like, it's not a massive sample, but you're looking at 5-6 games total. I think they're up to 6 games now in total ice time. 2.3 expected goals for, 3.7 against. They're getting absolutely shelled. 1.9 actual goals for, 4.9 actual goals against. Now, obviously, they were a lot better last year in a much bigger sample. But it's kind of the spot where I want to see it from them before I start playing them. Like, if they're going to keep playing like this, I don't want to play this line at 22% ownership. Even if they are going up against the Philadelphia Flyers, the ownership's even higher over on FanDuel at 26 to 27%. Like, I don't want to play a line that might come in at 25% that has just been plain old awful so far to start this season. And it's not like they're playing, super monster minutes. Like, you might see some games with them playing around 18 minutes. So not really super excited about Nashville 1 here tonight. I think it would be more playing the Philadelphia top line. The problem is they're coming in with a lot of ownership as well. Like, the mediocre prices and the matchups for both teams is bringing a lot of ownership to the top lines here. That's just something I can't really abide by. Like, if I don't cash tonight and it's because I'm playing a 22% Nashville top line that's been terrible at home, or playing the Philadelphia top line coming in at triple their top stack percentage on the road against UC Saros, like if that's why I don't cash here tonight, like it would definitely feel bad, man. So it is a good spot ostensibly for the Nashville top line, but again, I don't want to play them at 25% until I see them start to play well. Like I know you want to get in on the ground floor before they turn it around, and certainly Philadelphia is a team they could do that against. But Nashville power play has similarly just looked awful this year. 31st by expected goals generated per 60 minutes. Like, I feel like this is a situation where even though it's a good matchup for Nashville, if I get burned, I get burned. If this is the game where they turn it around, then so be it. I'm just kind of willing to take a stand and say I'm not playing a 25% line when they've been playing as bad as they have, even if it is the Philadelphia Flyers. So the top lines are fine to play, like by projection and by price. I think just by ownership on a 9-game slate, I think there are just other spots to look. So quite honestly, other than maybe like a one-off Joel Farabee, who's in the Power Plays article, playing over 20 minutes a night, or a one-off, Eeli Tolvanen, guys, cheap wingers for one-offs, I think I'm just leaving the forwards alone.
Yeah, not my favorite game from a DFS perspective. I like both goalies in this game. I do like Roman Josi on the blue line. Don't mind Ryan McDonough at 3,900. Niehaus favorite. Dante Fabro min price is also acceptable. On the Flyer side, there's just nothing that's really sticking out to me. Maybe Justin Braun for some shot blocks.
Interestingly enough, I don't hate Tony DeAngelo here tonight. I know he's pretty expensive, but the Nashville penalty kill has been just as bad as the power play. 30th by expected goals against, taking about 5 penalties per game. Not that Philadelphia is going to have a great power play, but if you give any team 5 power plays and you don't have a good penalty kill yourself, you could be in for a bad night. So I actually don't hate Tony DeAngelo on this slate for as expensive as he is. I think he's 6,600, over on DK. I think it's more palatable on FanDuel where he's 6,300. I'll take the ownership, even if it's 10, 12% or whatever. Don't mind DeAngelo as a one-off defenseman here tonight on FanDuel.
Don't forget to get your free $200 at MGM. Sign up using the link in the description. Get that free money from the books. Also, don't forget about promo code Hardwood. If my wife is nice to me the rest of the day, she might be using promo code Hardwood tonight. Moving on to the next game, we have the Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.0 total. Heading into Calgary, the Flames have a 3.4 total. This is another game I don't really know what I want to do here, because generally going into Calgary is a tough matchup. That being said, Markstrom has looked really bad. They've been flip-flopping their lines in the middle of the game. Like Elias Lindholm hasn't made it through a game recently on that top line. We've seen Kadri up there. We've seen Backlund up there. So I just don't know if they're going to stay together. Carolina doesn't take many penalties. They've been playing pretty well. Like, I want to get behind like Calgary 1, but I think I like Carolina a bit here.
Yeah, I'll start on the Calgary side. I'm with you on the top line. They've been moving guys around far too much. And, those have typically been in tight games. I think against Carolina, you would expect a tight game between these two teams here tonight. So you could see some even more flip-flopping. And that's not really something I'm super keen on. And the way Calgary runs their lines, that top line for the Flames is going to see a fair bit of that Jordan Staal, Jesper Fast shutdown line. And that's just the line that you want to avoid the most from Carolina. So could be a bad in-game matchup for them. Carolina, great penalty kill. I think, the price is fine. Like they're under 16K as a top line, and they're perfectly correlated on the power play. So I don't think it'd be bad to use them here tonight. It's just the Calgary second line that I like more. They've been really, really good in a small sample. Now, of course, with the line changes, they've been changed a little bit. Like, I think Dylan Dubé got moved down for Blake Coleman in the last game. So if you want to leave Dubé off the stack, I think you can do that. But in a small sample, Calgary's second line, 4.5 expected goals generated per 60 minutes, 4 actual goals per 60 minutes, and Nazem Kadri leads the team in shot attempts per 60 minutes. And, Andrew Mangiapane is coming off a 35-goal season, and he's a dual threat kind of guy. So I really do like the two-man of Kadri and Mangiapane here tonight. They should see a fair bit of that Carolina top line. And the Carolina top line has been pretty good offensively, but defensively not near as much. 3.2 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Now, they've generated more offensively, which is why they've looked good most nights. But 3.2 is a lot to give up. They've been, they got to thank their goaltenders for as well that they've been playing. So I do like Calgary's second line here. On the Carolina side, I think it's just going to that second line, Svechnikov, Necas, Kotkaniemi. They've been really, really good this year. 3.4 expected goals per 60, 1.5 against. Necas and Svechnikov both on the top power play unit, even though Calgary typically has a pretty good penalty kill. So I think Carolina 2 is perfectly acceptable as kind of like a secondary filler stack, but it's Calgary 2 that I like most in this game.
Agreed. Let's move to the blue lines. Brent Burns, 5,700 is okay. I don't think you have to include him with your Carolina stuff. Don't mind Brady Shea at 3,600 or Brett Pesce at 3,300. On the Flame side, Rasmus Andersson running that top power play unit. Carolina doesn't take too many penalties. I'll probably look for some shot blocks from Tanev or Zadorov.
Yeah, I think Brett Pesce is just flat out grading as one of the best values we have of all defensemen here tonight. At least over on DraftKings, he's priced all the way down to 3,300. Does run the second unit. Carolina does have a great power play, but it's still something for him. Still played a decent amount of minutes. So I don't mind Brett Pesce for a cheap type of defenseman. I think Burns can be used as a one-off here tonight just because of how much he's shooting, especially over on DK. I just think, for me, it's probably Pesce, maybe, like you said, Stone on DraftKings for the shot blocks, but that's about it.
Yep, we got 2 games left, about 6 minutes left, so let's get to them. Buffalo Sabres with a 2.8 total heading into Vancouver. Vancouver has one of the biggest totals of the night at 3.6. Man, this game just screams circus. Vancouver has been awful defensively. Alex Tuch's price has come down $700 since he had a hat trick. I like the Buffalo top line here tonight. On the Vancouver side, it's probably going to be some sort of power play stack. I do like that second line. I'm not a big fan of Podkolzin being there. I wish they would put Niels Hoglander back in the lineup and put him there, but I think you can power play stack the Canucks. You like both sides of this game?
I like the Pettersson-Kuzmenko line the most. Like, we're not showing any ownership on Vancouver here so far tonight. I'll bring it up on our screen so, the viewers can see. The top line, 4%. The Besser line, 2.5%. The Pettersson line, 1.1%. That's 7.5% of ownership over on FanDuel between the 3 lines. A little bit higher on DraftKings, a little bit higher over on FanDuel, around 15%, but still not much ownership for a team that has a 3.6 total. It's Pettersson-Kuzmenko that I like the best. 5.2 expected goals generated per 60 minutes so far this year. That is a monster, just an obscene number. Kuzmenko stayed on the top power play in their last game. That was something that we had a few concerns over. They're going to go into that second line from Buffalo. Rasmus Asplund is pretty good, but Casey Middlestad and Victor Olofsson are not good defensively. So I think it's a pretty good 5-on-5 matchup for them. I think Vancouver power play stack definitely in play for me as well. If you want to add JT Miller to Pettersson and Kuzmenko or add Horvat or whomever, but it's Kuzmenko and Pettersson that I like the most. On the Buffalo side, I don't mind that top line specifically just because of their pricing. Coming in with a lot of ownership on FanDuel, so it's more of a question there, but definitely in play for me over on DK, where Vancouver has looked shaky defensively this year.
Yep, on the blue line real quick, I don't mind Rasmus Dahlin. He's been absolutely a monster to start the season. On the Canucks side, Quinn Hughes for some power play stacks. Tyler Myers is a fine punt.
Yeah, I think Hughes at 5,300 is kind of that Drew Doughty range for me, where his prices come down enough that he's playable on DK, almost no matter what. I will mention Matthias Samuelsson for Buffalo with Henry Jokiharju injured. He played 25 minutes in the last game. Now, he played a lot of minutes because they were missing a defenseman, but it's where the minutes were allocated, right? They didn't go necessarily to Owen Power or Jacob Bryson or whomever. It was Samuelsson that played 25. So don't mind him as a punty type here tonight.
Coming up right after us, NHL Strategy Show with Greg and Neil. That's coming up at the top of the hour. Last game, we'll get to it real quick. Colorado Avalanche, 3.2 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.4 total. Colorado played last night. They looked awful. They lost to Seattle. Now they're heading to Vegas. Back-to-back on the road, not something I want to target on a big slate, but it is the Avs top line. When they do go off, they break slates. So what are you seeing in this game?
Yeah, I wrote up the Avs top line in the power play article specifically for this reason. By far the best leverage over on DraftKings. Only 6% ownership. It is a tough matchup. Don't get me wrong, but the Colorado top line, 3.2 expected goals generated per 60 minutes this year. They'll probably all play 20 minutes or thereabouts. They're all on the top power play unit. I don't know if you have to play them in single entry. But, if you're 20 maxing, that obviously from 150, but even if you're 20 maxing, I think Colorado 1 warrants some consideration here tonight. I do like the Vegas side here. The problem is, as Vegas, typically does, they're coming in with reasonably high ownership for what they're doing. More than anything, it's the Eichel, Smith, and Kessel line that I really like here. They have played pretty well together, 2.7 expected goals generated in their minutes. Smith was moved off the power play at times, so that could hurt. But they're still a cheap price, and they're going to get the second line from Colorado. And Colorado's been moving around their lines pretty much every game, their last 2 or 3 games, because that second line's just been so bad defensively. So I think it's a pretty good matchup for the Eichel line here tonight. I do like them as a stack. I think Colorado 1 also warrants consideration if you're playing anything more than 3 lineups.
Agreed. Let's just head to the blue line really, really quickly. Cal McCarr, it's going to be really tough to fill Colorado 1, but I'll take you on a very different path. Bowen Byram, fine at 3,200. On the Vegas side, probably Alec Martinez for some shot blocks, or Pietrangelo, 5,400, kind of underpriced despite him not having a great start to the season.
I think Bowen Byram's the guy. Expensive on FanDuel, probably not there, but on DK, he played over 25 minutes last night with Devin Taves out of the lineup for the Avs. So I think Bowen Byram, we can go right back to him here tonight.
Yep. Real quick. Oh, were you going to say something?
No, I wasn't.
I must have been hearing things. That is always a good thing. In net for punts, I like Carter Hart at 6,900 on DraftKings. Sorokin at 7,100. I think if you're going to spend up, I also will say I like Jake Allen. If you're going to spend up, I don't know what my favorite spend up option is here. Going through here, I don't mind UC Saros, but 8,500 is a bit pricey. Thatcher Demko 8,300 is always scary. Like, there isn't a big price up option for me, so I'm going to just be doing some pumping in net tonight.
Yeah, I think if you're going expensive, it's Saros or Demko. The cheap goalie I like tonight is Merzlikins. With no Jay Gensel, Columbus at home, I think he could have a decent night here tonight.
And my hat trick pick, I have a feeling you're going to take someone on the Canucks, so I will venture away from that. I will go Arthur Kaliev.
I wasn't. I'm actually going somebody in that Columbus game. Johnny Hockey. Johnny Gaudreau hat trick pick for tonight.
Sounds good. So for producer Slim Cliffy, I am your host, Josh Harris. We'll be back either on Monday or Tuesday. Good luck, everybody, and we'll see you in Discord.
Good luck tonight.